Comics have seen better days. That's just a fact. And within the world of Western comics, Marvel and DC have held the lion's share of sales for decades at this point. This only makes third-party success stories even more impressive. Ninja Turtles, Spawn, and today's subject, Invincible. With a hit Amazon Prime streaming show and even a fighting game, it's safe to say Robert Kirkman's superhero comic is a success. So, with all the hype around the series, I became curious about the original comics, and now that I've read them, I want to share my 2 cents. Is Invincible's success warranted, or is Kirkman just riding off the goodwill from The Walking Dead? Let's talk about it, but first, some housekeeping. This review is going to be split up in 3 parts. Part 1 is going to be just an overview of the early sections of the story, so if you're all caught up with the show up to the Season 3 finale, you're all good. And even if you don't know anything about this series, I'm going to make sure to give a warning before I discuss the heavy stuff. The later story arcs that the show hasn't adapted yet will be covered in parts 2 and 3. Alright? Alright. First, the premise. This is a world where superheroes are commonplace. The greatest hero on Earth is Omni-Man, a superpowered alien from the planet Viltrum who is secretly the writer Nolan Grayson, with a wife, Debbie, and a teenage son, Mark. One day, Mark develops powers similar to his father's and eagerly becomes a superhero in his own right, Invincible. We follow his adventures as he comes into his own as a hero, fights all kinds of strange villains, and makes deeply unsettling discoveries about the people around him. Right off the bat, Invincible doesn't even try to hide how referential it is. Omni-Man's obviously supposed to be Superman, the Guardians of the Globe are a Justice League stand-in, and Mark's favorite comic is Science Dog, which is an obvious reference to Alan Moore's Tom Strong comics. Except in the show he's called Seance Dog and is instead a Doctor Strange knockoff because... I don't know, actually. Maybe Amazon just told Kirkman nobody knew what the hell a Tom Strong was. Anyway, the on-the-nose references might have been a problem, except for the fact Kirkman knows to add his own spin on the characters. These aren't just cheap member berries, they're fully formed characters in their own right. For instance, Omni-Man has facial hair, and as the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League shows, DC would rather spend millions on CGI than allow Superman to have a mustache. The comic is very aware of superhero tropes and plays around with them in a way not too different from something like Dispatch. This goes beyond characters and world building and even affects the book's very structure. For instance, aside from one notable exception, Invincible Rebirth, you really don't have to read any other books to get what's going on here. Invincible follows the manga formula. You want to know where to start? Invincible #1. That's it. There are references to the larger world of Image Comics, even people like Spawn and Witchblade have cameos, but that's all they are. Blink and you'll miss it appearances that are just there for fan service. This feels like it was made by a nerd who's been reading the stuff all his life and has many of the same complaints about it that other hardcore nerds have. That's all well and good, except that you kinda have to sit with the comic for a while to get to that. For the first 10-ish issues, Invincible is very much just your bog-standard teenage superhero comic. I get why Kirkman does this, it's to lull you into a false sense of security only to blindside you with a twist. And just so we're clear, the twist is awesome. But it doesn't make the early issues any more interesting. I think it's why they hinted that something big was coming in the very first episode of the show. It's like Kirkman realized, oh damn, I need to let people know this isn't just a generic superhero show. Another thing they anticipated in the show has to do with the supporting cast, namely their development. For the first few arcs, Invincible is laser focused on its title character. 2 problems with that. 1, Mark at this point is just a very basic teenage superhero. You know the drill. Girl problems, balancing civilian life with superhero work, figuring out what kind of hero he wants to be. Not poorly written or anything, but it's also not mind-blowing stuff. Problem number 2 is that the supporting players feel very underdeveloped. In the early issues, Mark meets Alan the alien and joins the teen team, composed of Adam Eve, Rexplode, Duplicate, and Robot. Oh, by the way, these are all terrible names, just awful, awful names. These all go on to become major players in the story, but when they're first introduced, they barely get any screen time, so they just kind of fall into the background. They only start getting some more development after the big twist. But before getting into the big turning point, I want to talk about the art. The series has two artists throughout the majority of its run, co-creator Cory Walker and Ryan Ottley. Walker's art style is very cartoony and simplistic in the early issues. A bit too much, if I'm being honest. Take the cover for the comic's first issue, for example. The lack of detailed shading just makes the image look pretty flat. Also, the faces just look weird, I'm sorry. To be fair, Walker was literally still in high school when the comic started, and his skills improved greatly over time. I'll talk more about that in parts 2 and 3. Ottley comes in at around issue 10 and becomes the series' main artist. His art's a lot more detailed than Walker's and is the one I ultimately associate with Invincible as a whole. We immediately get some pretty intense fight scenes, and Ottley handles himself admirably, giving the fights the large-scale feeling they deserve, and like Walker, he also noticeably improves over time. One problem I have with the art in general for the early stretch of the series is the frankly lazy reuse of panels. The comic itself even pokes fun at it, but it doesn't make it any better, now does it? It's just a way to cut corners and fill up the page count. Thankfully, they tone it down over time. But let's talk about the twist now. This happens at around issue 10 of the comic or at the end of season 1 of the show. If you really don't know anything at all about Invincible and don't want any spoilers, you've been warned. Okay? 3, 2, 1. Omni-Man has been lying the entire time. The Viltrumites are not peaceful explorers. They're a race of ruthless conquerors who wiped out their own weak and spread across the universe, subjugating entire planets. Nolan wasn't protecting Earth out of the kindness of his heart, but because he had to prepare the planet for takeover, earn our trust, and make it easier for us to submit. He murders the Guardians of the Globe so they won't oppose him, and gives Mark the "you and I can rule the galaxy together" speech Vader gave Luke at the end of Empire Strikes Back. Invincible rejects the offer, obviously, and the result is one of the most brutal father-son fights in superhero comics. Omni-Man genuinely believes humanity is weak, that we'd be better off serving the Viltrumite Empire. Invincible tries to stop him, but he's just completely outmatched. In the end, Nolan leaves Earth, not because he's defeated, but because he can't bring himself to kill his own son. Kirkman, as a writer, is known for his shocking twists, and throughout the entirety of Invincible, I don't think any twist is as well known as this one. People like to cite Omni-Man as an example of the tired trope of "what if Superman was evil?" But I don't think that's fair. Hear me out for a second. He's a member of a superpowered alien race, comes to Earth, marries a human woman, fathers a son with whom he has a complicated relationship, eventually has an identity crisis because he thinks he's gone soft, goes off his rocker and murders a bunch of people, only to realize the error of his ways and join the good guys again. Nolan isn't "what if Superman was evil," he's "what if Superman was Vegeta?" Tell me you don't see it. After I lay it out like this, tell me you don't see it. And considering Prince Vegeta is literally the greatest fictional character ever created, I think the comic deserves some credit. So yeah, the twist is great, and Nolan is probably my favorite character from the first third of the story. After he leaves Earth, we spend a while just with the aftermath of it all. We meet Cecil Stedman, basically Amanda Waller, except, a white male, and he takes Mark under his wing as a sort of shady mentor. Cecil is extremely utilitarian, whereas Mark is very idealistic, and, in theory, this would lead to a lot of interesting arguments between the two. In practice, though, it's not that great. Cecil will usually make a cold yet logical case for his actions. Invincible will basically respond by gasping and saying, "How could you?" It's weird, the way it's portrayed, Mark just comes off overly naive. Like, once his dad turned out to be a bit of a psycho, it would have made sense for him to learn to not blindly trust people, much less shady government agents. I mean, for Christ's sake, Mark, these people killed JFK. It also doesn't help that Cecil keeps being proven right and Mark keeps flip-flopping on his beliefs. More on that in part 2. Around this time, Mark also gets his first love interest, Amber, and this is one of the most surprisingly strong elements of the comic. Invincible is very aware of how bad superhero romances can get. Some books turn into full-blown soap operas, screaming, crying, cheating, like a cheap Mexican telenovela where everyone just happens to be wearing spandex. Amber avoids all of that. We get a bit of the usual at first. Mark misses dates because he's busy fighting crime, you think you know where this is going, the usual stupid song and dance of, if I tell my loved ones I'm a superhero, they'll be in danger somehow. Except, no. Mark eventually decides to just tell Amber he's invincible, and while she is shocked, she also tries her best to be understanding. They eventually do break up, but in the most mature way possible. It's not because of contrived drama, but because their lives are just incompatible. Nobody's the villain here, they just want different things. There was this whole controversy when the show came out about Amber and how she was portrayed, with a lot of people calling her unreasonable and poorly written. I've only seen a few episodes of the show, but having now read the comic, I know for a fact they screwed her up in the adaptation. There is no way anybody would look at a comics accurate version of Amber and call her unreasonable. In fact, I'll come right out and say it. She's one of the best superhero love interests ever, a true highlight of the comic. Aside from that, during Mark's tenure working for Cecil, we finally get some more development for the secondary characters, and we learn the team's backstory. I appreciate that the comic isn't lazy and actually gives them different origins, such as Eve's being more science-based and Kate's being more mystical. I mean, I couldn't bring myself to care about either Kate or Rex at all, but it's a step up from, literally nothing. The comic really does hit its stride during this whole section. I was trying to read about 2 issues per sitting, but when I hit this part of the story, I was easily burning through like 4 or 5 a day. I really enjoyed it, especially since it feels like Invincible is coming into his own as a hero, even getting his own arch-nemesis, Angstrom Levy, a guy who can open portals to other universes. One day, Mark interferes with his plans and leaves him permanently deformed. From then on, Levy swears to ruin Mark's life. We also get more development on the space side of things. Alan the alien comes back to Earth and Mark learns there's this whole coalition of planets thing out there. They're the largest group opposing the Viltrum Empire, and they're also basically the Federation from Star Trek, complete with a dollar store version of the TNG crew. Okay. Anyway, Mark eventually gets summoned by Science Dog and travels to where his dad is. Turns out, Nolan's been living his best life as the emperor of an alien planet and macking on some bug chicks. So, now Invincible has a baby brother, Oliver, who, thanks to his alien biology, ages much faster. But before Mark and Oliver can fight over who gets to play Diddy in Donkey Kong Country, some Viltrumites show up and try to arrest Nolan for failing to take over Earth. He's not having that, and so father and son team up to fight the Viltrumites and protect the natives. This is the first step in Nolan's redemption arc, as he's clearly not blindly loyal to the Empire anymore and resents them for killing the people on that planet. At the end of the battle, Nolan gets taken prisoner and Mark is given an ultimatum. Take over Earth, or someone worse will be sent in to do it for him. Back on Earth, Invincible and Eve start dating, and the comic becomes weirdly horny. Just to be clear, I'm not a prude, okay? I'm 100% fine with fan service. You want to give me some attractive people to look at? Go right ahead. I'm not complaining about the characters being hot, I'm complaining that the comic apparently thinks just having the couples make out constitutes humor. Like, more than once we'll have a joke that's basically just, oh man, these two are totally going at it, huh? Like, they're really macking on each other right now, like they're so loud, it's so intense, oh boy. In a comic with aliens, talking dogs, and a supervillain group called the Lizard League, this somehow stands out as just juvenile. I also think maybe this is because Kirkman doesn't really know how to show Mark and Eve are in love, so he figures just having the two of them bump and grind all the time is good enough. The relationship as a whole isn't bad, but this does feel a bit weird. Regardless, we get a bunch of cool arcs in this part. Mark tries to teach Oliver how to be a superhero, we deal with an alien invasion, Angstrom Levy shows up again and again to threaten Mark's family. Kirkman has some fun just doing some side quests for a while, establishing this world and the people in it. Oliver is actually an interesting character in his own right. He's not a dumb kid's sidekick. His superhero name, Kid Omni-Man, is so mind-numbingly stupid that I think it loops back around to being cool. Like Cecil, he has a pretty utilitarian view on things. He straight up kills his enemies and feels no remorse doing it. Mark will usually quote Batman and say, "If you kill a murderer, the number of murderers in the world stays the same." To which Oliver will usually reply with, "Yeah, that's why I don't stop at one." Anyway, Levy keeps coming back and murdering people, including launching an all-out invasion of evil Invincibles from other universes to destroy Earth. A bunch of people die, one of the Marks has a stupid mohawk, and eventually Prime Invincible traps his copies and Levy in an alternate reality. But good heavens, would you look at the time. Remember how the Viltrumites gave Mark a deadline to take over Earth? Well, he didn't do it, so now they sent in somebody who will. Conquest, the biggest, baddest soldier in the Viltrum Empire. I appreciate how exhausting this whole thing feels for the characters. Like the story just keeps throwing one potential world-ending event after the other, with the alien invasion, Levy's attack, and now Conquest. Great sense of escalation. If Omni-Man was Vegeta, Conquest is Broly, a walking apocalypse of a man who exists purely to fight. The battle between Invincible and Conquest is absolutely savage, and the tension comes from genuinely wondering if major characters are about to die. Eventually, Invincible gets pissed off, forgets about the whole no-kill rule thing, and caves Conquest's face in, leading to a brutally satisfying victory. At the end, Mark reunites with Eve, who can apparently rebuild herself when she's near death, but the process leaves her completely naked. For some reason. Hey, I'm not complaining. So yeah, at this point, the threat of the Viltrumites can't be ignored anymore. Mark and the gang have to team up with the coalition of planets to take these dollar store Saiyans down. At the same time, Alan the alien gets captured by the Viltrumites and ends up being cellmates with, you guessed it, Nolan, who has re-examined his life and decided that, you know what, screw these guys, I miss my wife back on Earth. The Viltrumite War is coming. But that whole thing is gonna have to wait for part 2 of this review. You may have noticed some stuff is missing. Where's Powerplex? Where's Thragon and Issa? Where's the undisputed best character of the series, Battle Beast? Well, I'll talk about them in the sequel. Gotta have a hook, you know? But for now, I can tell you that no, Invincible isn't a total fluke. I'd argue becoming a worldwide smash hit always involves at least a little bit of luck, but there's still actual quality in this early section of the comic. Now, does it keep a high level of quality throughout? We're gonna discuss that in part 2. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the second part of this Invincible extravaganza. See you there.